Each year, a handful of video games inspire genres and design for years to come. The others fall into the scrap pile of history. But could there be bits worth bringing back into modern gaming? Hey everyone, this is Brosentia. Let's go scrapping. In 1990, a fairly young and lesser-known company named Face released Hani on the Road, a side-scrolling platformer with some decidedly strange twists. You and a friend can play as Honey and Lemon, two Hanywa statues tasked with... I'm not really sure. Google Translate is only marginally helpful, but it seems Hani gets woken up by some angry statue, the soul of Izanagi stuck inside the metallic being. Because of this, the two Hanywa statues have to go, wake a deity, and fix all this mess. Of course, Hanywa statues aren't well known to the Western gaming world outside of Animal Crossing's gyroids. Over 1,000 years ago, people throughout southern Japan formed Hanywa from clay and placed them around graves as a form of protection. Though these statues appeared as various species or items, humanoid figures are the most common form that appear in media. It's obvious why this never received a Western release. The folklore throughout the game doesn't make any attempt to reach the people outside of Japan. That's not a bad thing. Smaller games can reach smaller audiences. But that's enough about the folklore aspect. Let's talk about the gameplay. You know, starting the game feels jarring just because of how much is happening. Each stage has 4 lanes, all usually moving at various speeds to the left. At any point during the gameplay, Honey can move between the 4 lanes. The transition feels a little rough at times, especially with some platforms, but the overall effect is thrilling. I've never seen a game mechanic quite like this before. Lane-based games have existed for a while, of course, but most tend to be arcade games or smaller minigames like Tapper. God forbid, Back to the Future. Even a few newer games like Little Big Planet have experimented with multiple lanes, but if you remove the lanes, it's still basically the same game. This isn't true for Honey on the Road, though. The lanes are the game here, and learning to master them is the focus. Plus, every single level treats the lanes in a different manner. Normal platforming? Check. Absurdly fast racing level? Check. Level where angels grab onto your butt and drag you down into hell? I mean, yes, check. The game not only uses a new mechanic, it bends the rest of the game around it, creating a video game experience like no other. And it's a blast to play. The hell mechanic is something else that catches my eye. Essentially, if you fall into a pit on your final life, you go into hell. I know how it sounds. It's an extremely difficult platforming level. This is your final chance as a player to avoid a game over. Escape hell, and you're back to the level you were on when you died. It's a good idea in theory, but in practice, it's got some flaws. Checkpoints aren't super obvious in the game, but they come after every 3 or 4 levels. The Hell Zone is hard, and if you beat it, you go back to the beginning of the level where you last died. If that level doesn't give you a checkpoint, though, you're better off just getting a game over and continuing. You've got infinite continues after all. One easy fix here would be to limit the hell zones to levels that are right before the checkpoint. That way, the player knows a checkpoint is coming, and they know that it's worth battling through hell. I'd also make checkpoints clear for the players, no need to keep them guessing. Even with those problems, the idea of having a high-risk, high-reward mechanic for players is pretty dang exciting. Borderlands 2 pulls it off particularly well. Instead of dying, you get a timer. Kill an enemy before the timer runs out, and you live to fight another day. A few games play with this kind of risky survival mechanic, and I'd love to see more. As a player, nothing feels as good as surviving a clutch moment.
Okay.
It's a shame that Hani on the Road was largely missed or forgotten, but it makes sense. For 1990, the game was just too weird for people outside of Japan. It would have needed a complete rebranding. Neither the publisher nor the developer had much success in the Western world at that time, and considering the TurboGrafx 16's lackluster performance in the US, they made a fine decision, keeping it as a Japanese exclusive game. Of course, the Western world is much more interested in Japanese culture these days. Had the game released 30 years later, this might be a different story. The controls and platforming would need a little work, but with those tweaks, a remake could be a minor hit. With that said, Honey on the Road has some prime scrap with 4 lanes and the hell redemption mechanics. If you're an aspiring developer hoping to make a platformer that feels different, give this game a shot. This has been Brosentia with VG Scrapper. If you like what you saw, feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. I'd especially love to hear about games that you'd like to see scrapped.